Hello everyone, this is Margarita with CityGal Papeterie. Welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be creating some greeting cards using fall themed papers from Park Lane Papeterie. They have a paper pad that has papers pretty much for every season, and I pulled out a few papers that have fall season themed designs on them, and now I'm grabbing various sizes of card bases. When you want to make cards, I feel like the size is really all preferential. I use whatever I have. If I've got big cards, I use big cards. If it has small cards, I use small cards. If they came from a set, I use that. If they're pre-cut, pre-measured, pre-folded, all that stuff, my passion is really in just creating the cards and sharing them with others, not so much the sizes. So here in this video, you'll see me creating these cards using some of these papers and some of the scraps, as well as some ephemera pieces, again with the fall theme for each of them. I think all the cards that I use are A2 size that I grabbed from that basket, which is 5.5 by 4.25, and they were all pre-folded cards. I probably bought a pack of blank cards and I'm just using those up. So here I'm creating this very easy design where you have half of the pattern paper at the top and half at the bottom, and I tore the top piece so that it has some texture, and now I am adding some twine. I really like this twine. It is from Stampin' Up, and I believe I forgot to include the link in my last video, so I'm going to hopefully do that this time. Now, as I do the voiceover for this video, I have already used all of these cards. I sent them all out as thank yous to some friends and family that gathered with me recently, and I really like how they turned out. I hope you guys like how they turned out. I hope you are enjoying your fall season and getting crafty when you're able to. I know that can be hard sometimes for many of us. Definitely for me, I know for sure it can be hard sometimes. Here I'm using this rosette, and I wanted to trim it down a little bit. So I grabbed this roll of twine, and I'm just using it as a guide. I'm pinching it at the bottom, and I'm cutting around the edges to remove the excess. And now my little rosette is going to be smaller, which is exactly what I wanted. And I add fall themed elements from this ephemera pack. I think this is by Prima. And if you've been around for a while with my channel, you know that I don't normally like promote products. I just create for fun and to share. I always encourage everyone to use what they have on hand. I would never suggest people run out and buy new things. I know that's not possible for all of us. Many times we simply have what we have, and that is what we need to use, and that's perfectly fine. We can be creative with any budget. So here I'm moving on to the next card, and for this one I'm using the little scraps that were left over from the pieces that I used in the previous card. This is me just trying to think of what I'm going to do with these pieces. And once I find a coordinating color and pattern, I'm going to trim that down. You will hear my son in the background. He is here all the time. So once I line these up and I find the little design that I like, I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive in the back on the center just to keep it in place. And then I'm going to run them through my sewing machine. I did get a question in my last video about any tips for sewing on paper. Honestly, no tips. You just run it through your machine just like you would regular fabric. You don't need any special needles or tools or supplies. Regular thread that you would use for fabric as well. And I have a pretty basic Brother brand sewing machine, and it has not let me down. I use it on paper all the time and cardstock. Of course, you don't want to jam a bunch of papers in there, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to just sew a few stitching designs onto paper for some added details. I've chosen a sentiment for this one, and I thought I had decided on my little motif in the front there, but last second I thought I would add some more of this green twine. It's like twine and ribbon. I don't really know how to describe it because it's like twine but it's flat. And now that card is complete, and I'll begin with the next. And once I find my paper, I'm going to trim it down to size. And I think I'm leaving like maybe a 1/4 inch. No, I'm lying. 1/8 inch frame all the way around. So I am cutting my mat down to 4 by 5 1/4. And now once again, I'm going to rummage through my things and see what I have, see what looks good. I love this little heart leaf. It says autumn is love. And I do pair it with that red rosette. I keep wanting to say doily. It's not a doily. I have some raffia here, and I'm going to open it up to add a little tie to the leaf's stem. But I'm not able to create the tie with how the raffia is currently because it's too thick. So I open it up and I cut it in half, and I'm rolling it up again. Now it's more flexible, and I'm wrapping that right at the top of this ephemera piece on the stem of this leaf, and it's on the rosette, and now the whole thing goes to the front of the card. Now, because I added so many layers to that very thin cardstock, I'm putting my adhesive on my card base instead of flipping my card front over or the card mat over. I guess I would just bend it. On to the next card. This card base is gray, so a little different than the others, but still coordinates well. So here I've chosen half of my card to be red. The other half will be this really pretty orange. And I'm going to trim that down just a little bit. I do want to have the orange peeking from behind the red. So I'm going to adhere that in place, and I grab this little leftover piece of raffia, and I'm just going to sew it right onto the front of that card for some added detail and texture. I do try my best to use up all of my scraps. Whatever I've been using, if it's on the table, I'm going to grab it and find some use for it before I trash it. And that's sort of my norm when I'm creating cards or embellishments, or when I'm scrapbooking, or pretty much anything that I make. I try to always use up as much of the material that I have so that I'm not throwing away so much. And I know I'm not alone. I'm sure many of you out there do the same, or at least you save your scraps hoping that you'll find some ideas to use them in some time. And I hope that these videos help you all to get some ideas for using your scraps. So I did grab a blender and some of that distress ink in old paper to add a little bit of shading along the edges of the papers on this card. And as you can see, I chose that little card with the butterflies on it to decorate the top of my card. And I'm going to prop that up on some pieces of foam or foam adhesive. Here I'm wanting to add at least one more color, and of course I grab a piece of scrap that I've already punched a whole lot of, and trying to figure out how it would best fit on this design. Looks like my camera's still having temper tantrums. Eventually I hope to buy a newer camera, but we're not there yet. So I think I'm thinking that I'm not going to use that piece of brown, but I do end up using it. I'm just adding some pearl embellishments to the front here. So cute. And here I'm still feeling insistent on using this piece of scrap. The other piece was too big, so now I'm grabbing a smaller piece and cutting out a fishtail banner. And I've chosen a spot. And that completes that card. On to the next card. It's another gray base. And I have this orange pattern paper with this other pumpkin pattern paper. Which at first I looked at it and I was like, this is so busy. I have no idea how I'm going to use this pattern because it's really busy. But we figure it out. I backed it on the orange paper. I'm grabbing a piece of raffia, and once again I'm gonna open it up. Hopefully, I think I skipped some of this because we don't need to watch me trying to fight with raffia for however long it takes me, or maybe we do. Probably filmed this like a couple weeks ago and just haven't been able to get any voiceovers done. So it's all new to me too. So once that's all cut up or open and cut, I'm going to ruffle it, and I'm just kind of folding it over in an alternating fashion, and I ran that through my sewing machine, so I have that little strip of ruffled raffia paper to the right underneath my hand. I'm adding some blending, some shading rather, to the edges of my cardstock. I'm really liking how that looks. And now that I'm sure of that, I'm gonna add some tape to the back, and I'm gonna run it through my machine like everything else. Sometimes I let the strings hang, and then sometimes I pull them through the back and add a piece of tape or something to keep them behind, or tie them and cut them. Depends on my mood. And now that's going right onto the card base, and I'm going to add this really pretty strip of ruffled raffia. Love that. It's so cute. And now I grab this piece of red pattern paper, and I'm cutting out leaf shapes. And at this point I had no idea what I was going to do with the leaf shapes. I just didn't know how to embellish this card, and I thought I would give this a try. Now, if you want to try this, to cut out some leaf shapes. You can also trace them onto the paper from the back side and then trim it out that way. I freehanded it, but that's because I'm daring like that sometimes. We can't be scared of making mistakes. They're all lessons, right? So I've glued that. I've added some stitching to the leaves, and then I glued them together along with that little fox ephemera piece. I'm adding some dimensionals to the top of the leaves so that they are about the same height as the raffia. And that's the little embellishment for this card. I don't know if I add a sentiment. I don't think I do. No, I don't. On to the next card. This card is like a green color. I think it looks gray, but I think it's more green. And here we go, using up scraps. Scrap strip on one side and this piece of red paper on the other. And scrap papers are perfect for this purpose, to just tuck them underneath things, make little flags, little banners, stamp a sentiment on it. Use them for punching out shapes. And now I'm going to tape this in place. Now I have to figure out how I'm going to embellish the front. I use some of these little pumpkin stickers from the Dollar Tree. And I backed them onto that pretty brown paper. The brown paper has acorns on it. It's the acorn pattern. Very, very fall. I love these papers. I love fall. Let me know if you do too. Some people just prefer summer. And I am not a summer person at all. I mean, it's cool, but I love fall. And pumpkins. Here we go. Pumpkins. And that is that card? No, I think I add some, I add some enamel dots. And that's another thing, you guys can create your cards as simple or as elaborate as you'd like, depending on what you have or what your style is. I tend to start out very simple and I'm like, I need more things. Have to add more things. Just keep adding more things. I think I felt weird about this card because it doesn't have any stitching on it. And that was throwing me off. Now I grab a whiteout pen and I'm adding some white lines along the frame of my card. And I'm going to blame that on the missing stitching. I think my brain has now gotten so used to my cards having some type of stitching along the edges that when I don't have stitching, it's just not finished. It's not finished. So, but there's that one. And I like the white line. I think it came out okay. Not my favorite, but it's okay. So here are the cards that I created. Let me know what your favorite is. I think my favorite is this one right here with the butterflies. I'm just lining them up here for your viewing. I do like this one too, but I'm gonna say the one with the butterflies is my favorite. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it gave you some ideas. I hope you're out there creating whenever you can, and I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe.